Hello, your favourite atomic blonde here. Picard, season 3, episode 3. Oof. So I've literally just finished watching it. Just taking it all in. This show is just getting better and better. There's action, but also I think what's really I'm really enjoying about it is all the the writing, the character development, the character interactions. I mean, the whole story, the whole way, like Riker and Picard's relationship this episode, and by the end you're a bit like, oh no. It's like, they've been friends a long time, they're going to sort it out, I'm sure, but whoa, what a way to end it. So anyway, let's start at the beginning. So obviously the Titans at the end of the last episode has gone into the nebula. So as we know from Wrath of Khan and other episodes, if you go into a nebula, buggers up all the sensors. And it's kind of like an even playing field that they can't scan for each other. So in theory, they should be able to lose them in the nebula. They go in and they're basically hiding, repairing the damage that they've sustained so far. And we kind of kick off with Picard sort of finally, having a heart-to-heart with Beverly and like, what the hell? I've got a son. You could have told me. And I thought it was a really, really good interaction, good dialogue again. I think the bit, with Picard touching on how he didn't want to be a father because of his father, and he's opened up to Beverly. He sort of said, he's sort of scared that he'd turn into his father, and he's just better off just not going there. And she brings that up, and he quite rightly goes like, how dare you use that against me? I shared my deepest fears with you, and now you're kind of throwing them back in my face. Just because like that's how he felt and that is his fear doesn't mean that he wouldn't have stepped up to the plate. He wouldn't have tried to be a father or even be a good father. And since time has passed, he's like, he knows he wouldn't have turned into his father. He's a completely different man. He's his own man or machine. But she also goes on to explain, again, it's that kind of similar interaction between Kirk in Wrath of Khan and the doctor, and she's like, I wanted him in my world and not yours. And it wasn't as much that, but she's very much sort of saying, every time I thought about telling you, you were like here and you nearly got killed, and then you were here and then you nearly got killed, and his world was just so dangerous. And she just really, didn't want him to have to choose between her and Jack and his career. And also, just this overarching, motherly instinct to protect her son and basically not put him in harm's way. But quite rightly, Picard is like pissed at her. He's like, you had no right to make that decision for me. You could at least told me, and now, I've got a son and no relationship, and I think that's like a really honest and human response, because I think the danger of these things is everyone goes, oh, that's okay, I understand, and that's not, and then maybe you might get to that point. That's not how you start the conversations, So really, like, realistic dialogue between them, and her, defending her stance, and him just like, being robbed. And obviously we had from Nemesis that Picard's brother and nephews were all killed. So he was like the last of the Picards, and it's obviously weighed heavily on him because he never had a family of his own, and that was sort of touched on in Generations. So So to find out he's got a son and there's another Picard is a massive deal for him. So, but they kind of obviously sort of had to sort of park this, or in Picard's mind, he's very much, park this. And at this stage, you got Will talking to Jack and sort of saying what a great person Jean-Luc is, and he's one of the greatest men he's ever met, and really trying to build him up, or get Jack to at least give him, a chance, basically, to be his father. Jack makes a comment around, never meet your heroes. It's always massively disappointing. To which Riker's like, yeah, well, it generally turns out that, we're all human and we're all a bit flawed. And then Jack brings up that he's like not even human. He's like positronic. To which Riker just shuts it down, and it's just like, yeah, but he's the man he always was. And that's kind of like, that's it. We're not talking about this anymore. He is Jean-Luc Picard. But unfortunately, we got saddled with that stupid storyline. But we just need to kind of draw a line. I mean, they had the opportunity to retcon it with Q and didn't, so whatever. Yeah, so as things progress, they try to come out of the nebula and get away. The Shrek sort of straight on them, and they sustain more damage. And then Shaw is badly injured. He's cut his head, and he's coughing up blood, and he's getting bones sticking out of his leg. He's in a really bad way. And so you've got Riker and the Picard on the bridge, and he basically hands the command over to Riker, saying, like, you got us in this mess, you get us out. And Shaw's taken to sickbay. Riker and Picard kind of take charge, and again, there's some great interactions there. And Riker sort of takes evasive maneuvers and gets Picard to fire a torpedo and then blow the torpedo up, which is like the shockwave actually throws the ship, because of the weapons won't really do much, which gives them a chance to get away and get back into the nebula. Now they keep getting strange readings from the nebula that it's electrical but also biological, and they keep getting these power sort of surges, which isn't helping. Shaw in sickbay is basically deteriorating. He can't breathe, and the doctor there is really dismissive of Beverly, like, oh, you're so out of touch, your equipment's ancient, kind of thing, shoving her out the way. But basically Beverly, from old-fashioned doctoring, a bit of poking, and Tricord discovers that he's got an internal bleed, which didn't show up on the scanners. So she's trying to save Shaw. Obviously, they've got people repairing the ship. And then Jax kind of sort of sees the blood on the floor, and kind of has a thought about, because the Shrek keep managing to find them in the cloud, and there shouldn't be any way that they can, because the sensors aren't working. So Jack realizes, or has a theory, tries to go on the bridge. They're like, oh, you can't come on the bridge, it's red alert. Now, I'm sure this is a bit stupid. I'm sure if he turned around and said, I know how they can track us, let me in, or held the bridge, he could probably speak to one of them. But anyway, so he just walks off, going, oh, okay then, and goes find Seven. And kind of, because obviously she's still being confined to quarters, so he kind of breaks her, like knocks the guard out, and they basically figure out that they're venting some sort of gas, and that's how the Shrek are tracking them. They go and find this and try and fix it. But then the dodgy guy that we've seen from episode 1, who's always giving the weird sort of sideways glances, is a saboteur. And Jack sort of sees his face sort of ripple and change. And this gas that's being vented is sort of poisonous, and Seven's gone off to fix something else, so he gets attacked. And this gas is poisonous, so he sort of just left him to die. And then while all this is going on the ship, we then cut to old Riff Raff and Worf. And she comes to after her obviously drug that she had to take a hit of, and Worf's kind of doing these exercises with his sword thing and looking uber cool. And then she makes, like, as you do, she just comes up to him with a gun. And he just like throws this dagger and like lands just in front of her, and she's like, whoa. And she's like, who are you? And he gets the weapon off her like really easily because she's just useless. And she asks who he is, and he's like, I'm Worf, son of Morg, and on and on and on and on. House of this, house of that. And she's like, and she clicks, obviously, Jean-Luc has spoken about Worf, and she's like, oh my God, you're like a legend, you're amazing. Like, I've heard stories about you. She's all sort of fangirl gushing. And then they're sort of talking about the deal and the weapons that were stolen. And they need to go track down the guy that sold it. And initially, like, Worf's gonna shut her out, but then she gets a bit like, oh no way, I've been undercover and this, that, and the other thing, and I'm gonna go. And he agrees that she can come with him because it's better that she comes rather than just blowing everything up. So they go off to find him, and this is still on Picard S3. They manage to track him down, and there's a bit where like Raffi's kind of chasing him through the streets kind of thing, and Worf just grabs him and picks him up and just body slams him like through a table. And like in the previous scene we sort of heard how he's like working on himself and anger management and drinking chamomile tea, but when he needs to he can still pull it out. So they take him back and start interrogating him about who took the weapons that obviously destroyed the recruitment center, and Raffi's getting like, I'm going to rip your fingernails out if you don't tell me. Not sure we've seen that in Star Trek before, but and Worf is sort of giving this whole speech around, I used to be like her and like you, and you just need dial it down a notch, and it's all about anger. It's not all about anger anymore. But the way the lines are delivered are really, really good. And he has some great one-liners in it as well. Absolutely great one-liners. Absolutely loving this new Zen Worf that can just when he needs to rip it out. And they basically sort of and then they discover that this guy, he starts sweating profusely, and initially they think he's got withdrawal from drugs. But then Worf notices something else, and his face starts to ripple. And again, it's another changeling. So anyone doesn't know, like, changelings, and this is all connected to like Dominion War, and obviously Odo from Deep Space Nine was a changeling. So Starfleet can't really get involved or call out this faction. So basically, a faction of these changelings left over from the Dominion War, who have been, who've been causing trouble. They don't know what they're after yet. But what they decide is that stealing the weapon to destroy the recruitment center was actually a distraction, and they've stolen something else, something worse. And Raffi and Worf decide to go off and find out what weapon have they stolen. And Starfleet are sort of saying they couldn't really call out this faction, or they're struggling politically to do something about this because it could re-trigger the Dominion War again or restart the war. So back on the Titan, Picard is kind of, he makes a comment about, you're gonna start calling me number one. So he's sort of number one to Riker now, and they're discussing tactics and options. And the science officer said that we can't go right into the heart of the nebula because there's like this gravitational thing that will kind of destroy the ship. So they're like, we're going to have to come out the nebula then. So obviously they're trying to fix the warp drive. So Riker's being very risk averse. He's kind of like, that we'll get out, we'll get to warp, we'll get away, and we need to, look after the crew. Picard is being much more gung-ho, saying, no, we need to get out, we need to fight. And Riker, initially, he's sort of taking Picard's inputs on board, but then we kind of get to the point where it really starts getting quite fractious between them. And it's kind of the role reversal of the dynamic we used to have on the Enterprise, where you had Riker was probably much more gung-ho and let's take the fight to them, where Picard was always much more cautious and let's talk about it. And it's complete like opposite now. So Riker's like, I've got, we put this crew in jeopardy. We've got to protect this crew. There's 500 lives at stake here, and it's down to me to get them out alive. And we, our weapons aren't a match for the Shrike ship. But Picard keeps going on about this, like, let's, we need to take the fight to them. So Riker overrules him initially. They go to fly. Seven contacts the bridge to say they found out that there's a saboteur and a changeling on board. They've stopped the leak, so the Shreks can't find them now. So Riker's like, we're going to use this. They can't follow us. We'll get out and we're going to go. So they go to leave the nebula, but the Shrike ship is still there. And every time they try and leave, so the Shrike ship powers up this weapon. They don't know what it's going to do, but the energy readings like off the chart. They fire the weapon, and the weapon sort of shoots over the ship, and then creates like energy ball, and it basically opens this portal. So the as they're coming out of the nebula, they go through the portal, and then it basically brings them back into the nebula. So it just sort of ends up just putting them back where they started. So they try twice, and they just sort of end up back where they started. So again, they end up going into the nebula, and they can only do this for a little while. Meanwhile, we see the changeling put a device on like the warp conduits, obviously a bomb. So Riker and Picard discuss again, and Riker's still, no, we're running. We're not fine. We're running. Then, as they get close to leaving the nebula, or as they come out the nebula, the bomb goes off, and obviously they lose all power to warp drive, so they can't get away. Then, so Picard's like, well, we've got no choice now. We're going to have to fight. And Riker reluctantly says, fire all weapons, fire everything at them. So they launch torpedoes. And then unfortunately, they find the weapon again. So all that happens is those torpedoes go through the portal, back round, and actually end up hitting the Titan and just taking the Titan out completely. The Titan then starts sort of sinking down towards the nebula and this gravity pull thing. And they've got no power, no engines, no nothing. And this is when it's like Riker just sort of turns to Picard and orders him off the bridge. And basically says like, well, you've killed us all now, which I thought was a little bit harsh, because yes, Picard was saying, right, we've got to fight. I mean, he didn't have to fire all weapons, so I thought it was a little bit harsh. But there was a little bit like, oh, because it like really had this sort of bit of a set to on the bridge, and there's a mutual respect there. And I'm sure they'll sort it out. But when you see like, it's a bit like watching your parents argue. It's like when you see two really close friends just like fall out to the point that Riker like get off my bridge. It's like, oof, we're like, oh. So yeah, really good episode, very moving episode. And obviously there was some scenes at the beginning where we know that Riker obviously lost him and Troy had a son and a daughter, but their son died. And there's kind of a little flashback scene with Riker and Picard in a bar just after Thaddeus was born. Because the episode is called 17 Seconds, and we find out why. It's like he was on the bridge of the Titan, the birth wasn't going well, and he gets an announcement from sick bay saying, you need to get down here, and he's just saying, it puts the fear of God in you, it's like, is my son going to die? Is my wife? And he said it took 17 seconds in the turbo lift to get there and get to sick bay. And he said it was like the longest 17 seconds of his life, and he sort of, sees his like son's life flashing before his eyes and what he could be and what if he's lost him and all of that. And there's some really good de-aging actually of Picard and Riker. We do get a whole thing come up and Deanna's on there and moaning and bitching and like, oh, you're out drinking while I'm looking after the baby, and he's projectile vomited everywhere and whatever. But the de-aging was pretty good actually. They didn't have to do too much to Jonathan, but obviously there was quite a bit of cragginess taken away from old Jean-Luc. Patrick Stewart. It was quite a nice little scene, and again it's just really showing that closeness, that friendship. And then Riker sticking up for Picard, and Picard is like, all gung-ho and we've got to take them out, and Riker's like putting out, that you're hyped up, your son's on board, he's nearly died, take a chill pill, this is kind of new to him kind of thing, to the point that they just fall out, and he's just like, get off my bridge, you killed us all. It was like, oh my days. Yeah. And great episode. So these interactions between Picard, Beverly, Riker, really good. Oh, and we do find out why Jack has an English accent, because he went to school in London, and he just never lost it. Some people don't. Some people, can move and live somewhere else for 50, 60 years and never lose their accent. Other people pick up accents overnight. So at least we have some some reason why Jack has an English accent. So that makes sense. Lucy's explained as well. So good job, Terry. Make loose ends. So again, I really enjoyed this episode. I was probably pretty much on the edge of my seat for most of it, and we still don't know how the hell they're going to get out of this situation. How are they going to get out alive? The ship's dead. Riker and Picard aren't even speaking to each other. There's nobody knows that they're there. There's like, I don't know. And so we've got this relationship developing with Raffi. It's quite interesting actually, because Worf calls her by her full name, which is like Rafaela, I think he calls her. Never heard her called that before. So there's even like, with the adaptation, or not the adaptation, the development of this character, that Terry's kind of given her a new name as well. And so Worf only refers to her as Rafaela. So it's almost like a bit of a delineation there between Raffi was that Trek, Rafaela is this Trek. And I think I said last week, I think it could be quite an interesting dynamic and relationship between Worf and Rafaela. Because he sort of says, you got the heart of a warrior, you got a lot of spirit, and but you just, he's trying to give her anger, the Klingon giving her anger management lessons. Who'd have thought it? So so I wouldn't say I'm won over on her character by any way, shape, or form. And again, if she doesn't make it to the end of the season, I'm still not that bothered. Sorry, but there are some improvements, and like you say, the character he's paired her up with works really well. And Worf was just great. So I love in this sort of zen Worf who could just sort of switch it on and off. It's great. Can't wait to see where that goes. And ultimately, how do these storylines like diverge together? Will we actually see all the crew together? I know we saw in the trailers that Worf and Riker were getting on the transporter together. So at some point they must meet up, and that must mean they get out of the nebula. But I'm buggered if I know how they're going to get out. Unless there was a point when they were coming out of the nebula before they went through the portal that Riker sort of said prepare like SOS and send out messages. So whether they managed to get a message away before they went through this wormhole thing, don't know. That's the only thing I can think of, unless Rafaela and Worf managed to come across something and find out where they are. But I cannot wait to find out. And heard really good things about episode 4. This is the one that really kind of locks you in. Apparently it's quite sad, so I'm like, oh God, does somebody die? Please don't anybody die. Unless it's Raffi, it's fine. So each episode, this keeps getting better. The characters are getting better. The conversations, the dialogue is really realistic. I'm really enjoying this show. Oh my God. I can't believe I've got to wait another week to find out what happens. Great job. Great job. There's a couple of stupid things in this episode. I'm not saying it's perfect. There's a couple of things like, when they did sort of come out the nebula, they're kind of like sort of standing, like, I'm like, punch it, just kick into warp. So when they're like there for ages before they go, oh, they're powering up the weapon. So I'm like, well, go to warp then. And they're just sort of dicking around a little bit. So by the time they're like, you could have said go to warp. There's a couple of little story bits and bobs like that, which is a little bit annoying. Like Raffi just wakes up and tries to attack Worf straight off the bat. You're like, really, would you? I don't think so. But yeah, there's a couple of little silly things in there. But overall, the good stuff far outweighs these little annoyances that they kind of go, really, what'd you do that for? And so when they the science officer goes, it's a spatial anomaly, something we've never seen before. Inside, you're just dying a bit because that's stock answer in bloody STD. It's like, seriously, could you not come up with what it is? Some science. Just once, maybe. Very annoying. So yes, this show is not perfect, but bloody hell, it's enjoyable. And I'm really, really having fun watching it. There's tension, there's a little bit of humor, and I'm dying to know how the hell this is going to resolve itself. So yeah, another thumbs up. So do go check out Picard episode 3, season 3, episode 3. I actually found out last week it's on Paramount Plus and Amazon Prime. As not part of Paramount Plus. And so 2 places you can watch it in the UK, Paramount Plus and Amazon Prime. Unfortunately, still only get it on a Friday, not Thursday like in the States, obviously where it's on Paramount Plus. But if this show continues to build week on week and what we're seeing, I think we're in for one hell of a season and a season finale. So fingers crossed I haven't just jinxed it. Do go check it out. I think you're really going to enjoy it. As I always say, if you're out, you're out. I hear you. But bloody hell, I'm loving this show. So, have a good week. I'll be back with a review for episode 4 next week. And come and catch me on Sunday for Sunday lunch. You take care. Bye-bye.